The Republican Party now controls a majority of the Senate and the House of Representatives at the federal level. While the Democrats can filibuster some legislation, most legislative changes will now get through. And most definitely, tax policy changes are inevitable. Furthermore, two-thirds of the state legislatures and governorships are now in government control. Broadening the base, flattening the tax rate, serve to act as inducements to invest in real estate. Before we begin, let's start with a brain teaser. That way we'll be warmed up, and when something is complex, we'll be able to take it on. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to keep your answers to yourself if you're with a group, but if you're alone, of course you can speak out to whoever you want. Now, I want everyone to pick a number between 2 or 9. It could be 2 or 9, or any number in between. Next, I want you to multiply that number by 9. Now, you should have a double-digit number in your mind. If not, double-check your multiplication. Now that you have a double-digit number in your mind, or you've written it down, I want you to add the 2 digits. As an example, if your number is 52, add 5 plus 2 and you get 7. So everybody should have, or you should have, a single-digit number. If not, double-check your addition. Now I want you to subtract 5 from that number. You should still have a single-digit number. If not, double-check your subtraction. Now I want you to think of the alphabet letter that corresponds to that number, such as A being 1, B being 2, C being 3. Now everybody should have had a letter in their mind. Now think of a country that begins with that letter. Now the second letter of that country, think of that. Such as if you had Argentina, you would have R. Okay? So now think of an animal that begins with that letter. Think of the color of that animal. Now, of course, folks, the problem is that there are no elephants in Denmark. And the moral of the story is, if you know where you want to end up, you can always get a plan to get there. Now, if you got rats in Argentina, go back and double check your math. So now that we're all warmed up, let's get started, shall we? Now that you're warmed up, let's get started and discover how you can put some simple ideas to work to make money investing in real estate. Lowering income tax rates gradually or in one piece will make real estate more attractive. If all you wanted to do is to get one thing out that you could use to apply to make money in real estate, well, this would be it. Now you can turn the presentation off or simply go home. Thank you. The Second Avenue subway was first proposed in 1919, and there were many attempts to start construction only to be delayed due to bureaucratic and other reasons. It started in earnest the first time during the 1970s, but had to be halted due to the fiscal crisis of New York City during that era. The Second Avenue subway project restarted in earnest in 2007, and phase 1 of the project opened in January of this year. Values have doubled as real estate in the Upper East Side have become more attractive as rents have increased. The New York Post is always trying to gain readers, but has chimed in on this story by reporting that a man has been found dead on the Second Avenue subway. So the Second Avenue subway couldn't even bask in its glory without the New York Post finding some smudge. The Second Avenue subway is a simple example of how we, as intelligent investors, can find other infrastructure projects. Here are some great Second Avenue subway ideas or infrastructure plans that are coming in the next years. You know, it's interesting that in 1890, Charles Dow said that the patent office can be closed because every idea had already been discovered. I think investing is a lot of the same thing. A lot of people are hesitant because they think all the great deals have happened already. But in fact, there's a lot of changes coming down the pike. Let's first explore Trump's $1 trillion infrastructure plan. Obviously, if past events are any indication of the future, the infrastructure will be spread throughout the United States and highly politicized. Also, what is being proposed is a private-public plan where private industry will be able to charge tolls. This is not how infrastructure was done in the past, and also it could have a negative effect on real estate, being that if we look at the Chicago private conversion of parking meters, parking in Chicago has become the most expensive in the nation. Here in the Westchester area, we have the Tappan Zee Bridge currently under construction and scheduled to be open in later of 2018. What we need to encapsulate with the Tappan Zee Bridge is that per thousand, the property taxes in Rockland are greater than Westchester. In fact, a $500,000 home will have a $2,000 difference in property taxes. Now, people in Westchester are shocked or amazed to hear this, but the real reason is that Westchester property values are a great deal higher than Rockland, so the rates can actually be less. But what would we expect once the bridge opens? We should expect parity, which would probably mean that as values in Rockland would rise, their rate of tax would go down. Another phenomenon that we can look at is driverless cars, because people will be able to commute longer distances while they work in their cars. So they might be able to go to subways that are further away, such as Putnam or even Dutchess or Orange County. There has been a New York State free tuition plan that would attract a lot of people to the state with children, which would ultimately attract businesses that would want to service people with children, which would also drive up real estate prices. As I said earlier, they're flattening the tax rates, having less progressivism. This will serve to lower the desire to take risk, which makes real estate more attractive. Let me explain why. When you have a high progressive tax rate and wealthy people look to invest, they're okay with taking on more risk because greater risky investments, such as owning a business or buying machinery and equipment, hiring more employees, are tax deductions. This tax deduction lessens the choice. If taxes are lowered, you don't have that tax deduction, or it doesn't mean as much. So what you look to do in a lower tax rate environment is get fixed to terminal sources of income, aka rent or dividends. Furthermore, the policies that are being proposed are to double the standard deduction. For instance, a married filing joint, they're going to see their standard deduction double from $12,600 to $24,000. What this serves to do is make the choice to home ownership to be irrelevant. Of course, you can still buy a home and pay off the mortgage and build up equity, but the deduction of the mortgage interest versus not having a deduction for rent makes the two the same. So in most of the country, there will be no incentive to own, and renting will be just the same as owning. Another thing that we also have to encapsulate, and this might have to do with the far right of the party and misogyny, to be quite blunt, is that they want to eliminate the head of household deduction and raise taxes for single parents, 80% of which are single moms. This means that in areas of the country where there's a great deal of women parent or moms who are parents, or just single parents in general, the increased tax burden will probably make their choices for real estate to go to lower priced real estate because they're going to be paying more in income taxes. these are phenomena that we as intelligent investors can take into account and put to work to make money. Find that by going to citydata.com and get the 101 cities with the highest percentage of single-parent households, which we can see is very few and far between in the mid part of the country and out west. You can look for a decrease in real estate values in these areas. Other demographic trends: aging U.S. population, which means states like Florida and Arizona and Nevada will continue to attract people. Half of the U.S. now makes less than $30,000. The link is there for you. So we have to also consider income inequality when considering our real estate purchasing or real estate investing. And again, I take you back to the single moms who are now going to have to take more in inferior housing to maintain their lifestyle because their taxes are going up. We also can look at solar, wind, tidal, and renewable. Vermont has the most generous credit and the most solar, wind, and renewable. This is attractive if we foresee an increase in oil prices. You know, they say oil always goes in booms and busts. The last cycle of boom and bust ran from the 80s to 90s, went up into 2000 and climaxed in 2008 and over $4 gasoline. A lot of us probably remember that, and was a contributor to the 2008 financial crisis. So if you want to take advantage of that, states that are going to have more renewable energy will do better. Incidentally, New Jersey used to be fourth in the country in solar energy until they took their credit away when Chris Christie got elected. So this is an example of legislative changes affecting what? Real estate investing. We also have to consider the fact that these Republican tax cuts have not been enacted and could be enacted slowly or a phase-in over time. more emphasis on why the math is important. Again, California was there were 80% declines in real estate values in the 2008 bubble. In New York, the biggest declines were 20%. So the property taxes we pay in New York, although we hate to pay them, keep what? Keep stable real estate values. They also keep the towns providing amenities that we like, such as parks and senior bus rides and things of that nature. As these things decrease and values of the houses go up, eventually the cost of living catches up and we have a boom and a bust. Another phenomenon that happened in the financial crisis of 2008 was that people were following herd mentality in Florida, and they would typically buy new construction thinking that the developers had an in on where real estate appreciation was going to happen. But what they were shocked to find out is that once they bought a new house, their homes were considered used construction, and the newer buyers came in and bought new construction, and they were locked in for a certain period of time, waiting until the new construction finished. So they might have wanted to be long-term real estate holders, but because of the economics of new construction, they were. And just wanted to repeat that interest coverage is a signal of bubble-like behavior, as the cash flows cover the interest less and less. Low property taxes increase volatility, what's called short-termism. Higher property taxes result in stable property values. Be rational. The typical real estate investor buys property in the geographic area they're familiar with. In fact, in this presentation, I'm speaking mostly about New York real estate because the audience was mostly precipitated with and knowledgeable about New York real estate. However, as I showed you in the head of household filing status being taken away, we can get information on almost anywhere. Be wary of new construction. In Florida, because there was a herd mentality to buy, many people who had a 3 to 5 year horizon couldn't sell because, like a used car, as soon as they bought real estate, their real estate was considered used. And until all the construction stopped, they weren't considered the same as the new construction. Also, these tax changes haven't happened yet, and if it's too good to be true, it probably is. Flipping houses is something that besmirches me because, as everyone knows in real estate, there's transaction costs that you don't have when buying other assets. You have to have a lawyer to do a closing, except in Florida, you don't allow one. Other tidbits: if you want to use your residential home as your first real estate purchase and flip it, after 2 years, you're A, considered a new home buyer, and B, at the bottom of the slide, a married filing joint, if you've lived there for 2 of the 5 years, you get to exclude $500,000 of the capital gain and $250,000 if you're not married. What a home buyer means is that you can take $10,000 out of an IRA penalty-free but not tax-free to buy a new home. This is important because a lot of people think that once they've owned a home that they're not a new home buyer. Not true. For tax purposes, after 2 years, you're considered a new home buyer after you've moved out and rented. Real estate can outperform a 401k. Number one, you're using the bank's leverage while the 401k does not, and the 401k charges 1 to 3% of the fee. Now, in a 7% environment, that's 1/3 of the investment. That means you're paying 1/3 of your 401k return to the brokerage firm. Also, the 401k, when taken out, is ordinary income, and real estate is considered capital gains. Now, folks, one thing I am making clear, you should always invest in your 401k up to the point that the employer is matching your 401k. The reason? That's 100% gain with no risk. Real estate is also tax preferred. For instance, if a homeowner buys a two-family house, utility costs can be split between the rental and the home. Whereas if you just buy a home with no rental property, you don't get the deduction for rental expenses, or you don't get to split the deductions for maintenance. Bill Gates wrote in The Speed of Thought that the real estate agents would not be in business for much longer. In fact, that they were soon become extinct. He might not have been correct, but the days of 6% real estate commissions are now history. Here are some good ideas that you can put into use if you're a landlord and you have extra time on your hands to manage the property. If you don't, of course, these ideas wouldn't work, and you're better off using third parties. One is to save yourself the management agency cost. You can use the internet to find great plumbers, contractors, and whatnot. You can also use it to consider being your own real estate agent. You can find tenants. You can use pay-per-click advertising, such as AdWords and Bing. And you can also start a Facebook page, a Twitter page, and a LinkedIn page, and use PageModo to post 3 or 4 times a day the homes that are available for the spaces that are available for rent or for sale. There's also software that will continuously post on Craigslist. So these are things that you can do to set up to be your own real estate agent, or your own management agent or real estate agent. Another example is also if you, let's say you have a multi-family home where you live in the downstairs and the tenant lives upstairs, but you provide them with an organic garden, have a decent relationship with them. Have them write a review on Yelp and other places such as Google, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Just another tidbit, be wary of new construction if your investment horizon isn't long-term. This is an example of an invoice that can be sent automatically by the computer every month. Intuit provides QuickBooks Online, and what this would do is this would automatically go to the tenant. He would pay the invoice. He could even set it up where he pays it automatically, and then it would automatically debit the receivable in the accounting package. You wouldn't have to do any work. All you would need to do is look at your receivables a couple of days into the month and see who isn't paying, and then send out letters and whatnot, which also can be automated. This is a recurring invoice. You could also use what are called recurring sales receipts, where the tenant indicates that he's going to pay you by automatic bank draft every month by signing an agreement. Some more notes on QuickBooks Online. Intuit gives you a test drive company. The link is in the presentation. Basically, you can test drive any transactions you want, including the recurring sales receipt or recurring invoices, online before you buy the program. And you become a QuickBooks expert if you so choose to be before you even purchase the product. I think this is a wonderful place for real estate investors and landlords to check out cloud accounting. Some more information on using the internet. Pay-per-click advertising encapsulates AdWords and Bing words. These are search terms on the internet. For instance, let's say you have a property at 12 Main Street. You would make 12 Main Street a search term. If the person did a search on 12 Main Street, your ad would show, which would say, check out my house available for rent at 12 Main Street. So he would click the ad, and then it would take him to what's called a landing page, and the landing page would show pictures of the property. Now, Google and Bing have an algorithms that you need to understand as you get more and more involved in real estate, and you want to replace what? Your real estate agent and even maybe your management agent. And you get more broad, you would say rent at 12 Main Street, or get a room at 12 Main Street if you wanted to set up your own Alibaba. Anyway, long story short, I urge you to check out AdWords and Bing Ads, which both provide intensive video and training on. PageModo, I mentioned before, is a system. Hootsuite is another one where you can do multiple posts a day. So if, let's say you have a rental property for sale or you're looking for tenants, you can schedule posts at 9:30, 2:30, and 5:30 so that most likely people will be able to see your rental property. Yelp.com, Google Places, or places where you can have people write reviews about what a great landlord or real estate investor you are, and then you can use that in your advertising in AdWords and Bing Words. YouTube.com is super. You can take a picture with your smartphone, which the pixels always have increased to the point of expensive cameras from years ago, and also video, and post it online so that people can actually see your place. These things all bring to me Bill Gates' comments in The Speed of Thought that perhaps his prediction will come true, and that people will be their own real estate managements and real estate agents. Directory websites are also another place to list, and as I mentioned before, Craigslist. I believe what you should do next is consider getting a CPA who will understand your taxes and real estate and is knowledgeable about real estate. In fact, he should have an MBA from a good program such as Columbia or Fordham, where I went, NYU as well in the New York area. They should be able to do multiple year tax planning, and you should even ask them if they have multiple tax year planning software such as BNA and other software. When I say have extensive experience in real estate, they should have worked at the Big Four, such as I have, and they should be passionate. Obviously, doing the presentation and posting it on YouTube is an indicator that I am passionate and accepting new real estate clients. So if you want to get in touch with me, you can do so here. I'm located in New York, but willing to accept clients all over the country. I often am asked about interest rates and what direction they're going. First of all, the interest rates of the 1990s are probably a long thing of the past unless certain conditions change. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about the GATT agreements, World Trade Organization changes in the early 2000s with the late Clinton administration and early Bush administration. Basically, we live in a world where most of the United States products are made overseas, and the surplus of profits from those products are recycled to Wall Street. This serves to keep our interest rates down. For instance, China doesn't want the U.S. currency becoming weak, or the Chinese yuan or renminbi becoming stronger than the dollar. So they park their profits from products they sold to the United States in Wall Street. And Wall Street, to be quite blunt, is motivated to maintain this, because if somebody produces a product in the United States, that they're going to take that money home, maybe put in a 401k plan, maybe not, maybe buy real estate and compete with them. They don't want that. They want the money circulating back to Wall Street. So do not, my thoughts anyway, you can have appreciating real estate in an increasing rate environment. As a matter of fact, when the rates start to increase, people want to buy quickly because they don't want to do what? Pay a higher rate down the road. but I don't expect interest rates to go any higher than 3%, and that would be a long shot. Another thing I'd like you to consider is behaviorism. The researchers did a study on Monkey Island with monkeys. Do you know that monkeys can use currency? Well, great. So they didn't just teach monkeys how to use currency. They gave them a choice of what to do with that currency. So basically, monkeys like grapes. So once they got the monkeys buying grapes from research assistants, they gave them a choice between two lab assistants. The first lab assistant would have 3 grapes, and when the monkey gave them the money, they would take one away and give them 2. The other lab assistant would have 1 grape, but when the monkey gave them money, would add a grape, also giving them 2. The monkeys went with the 1 grape lab assistant and not with the 3 lab assistant because of the rules of addition and subtraction. We as human beings are subjugated to this 30 million, this instinct created 30 million years ago, which has us only wanting to add and not subtract. It is the predicate of the behaviorism involved in bubbles. So we should encapsulate that in our thinking. Thank you for listening to me. Please send me your thoughts.